Welcome back to another episode of Empathic Chronicles. I'm your host, Tiffany Elise, and today we're diving into a topic that many find difficult to talk about if it's something that you live through, but I feel like it's incredibly important to recognize, especially since we just had Father's Day on Sunday. So this episode is about daddy issues. Now, daddy issues is a term, so I struggled a lot with abandonment issues and trust issues, and that lasted well into the beginning of my marriage because I realized that that was also impacting my marriage. So my dad and I, we've always struggled. It's always been difficult. I get major FOMO, or if you want to call jealousy, from other people when I hear about how awesome of a relationship they have with their dad, or even one of my best friends, Amanda Martin, that I recently did a podcast episode with about grieving, about loss. She was very close to her dad, and that was a relationship that I admired tremendously. And so I've always wanted to be closer to my dad than we currently are, but I've never felt that he's truly taken me in and accepted me. It's always been kind of, oh, well, I'm appointed to, spend every X weekend with you, so let me just do it. So I know that because of that and because of the way that I felt, when my stepmom had my step siblings, I was so freaking happy, and I'm still very close to them today, but it was someone new and someone new that loved me. I remember my first sibling was my sister, who is super awesome, and she's a cosmetologist and super talented. But I remember holding her. I still have a picture. I mean, I guess for me, it kind of gave me a purpose because I wasn't really feeling loved by my dad, and I wasn't really feeling definitely not loved by my mom. So having this role as a stepsister, if you will, not if you will, I mean, I was a stepsister, it made me so happy, and I mean, let's be honest, growing up, my relationship with my dad was complicated. It's reality. I mean, I feel like it's safe to say it, but he was often absent due to work. And when he was home, he was emotionally unavailable. So then when they divorced, it wasn't anything much changed. But then when he and I would spend time together, I realized how distant we were. I realized how I never really truly connected with my father. It was kind of just he was in my life. He was the provider for our family. Then they divorced. And then it was kind of I was just collateral damage. I remember oftentimes going with my dad when he would pick me up for the weekend and just feeling out of place, especially even more so when my step siblings came into the picture, because I felt like I just didn't belong, and my brother, I felt like he even felt more so of an outcast. Now, my brother, who we share the same mom, he's always struggled, mentally, emotionally, physically. So, I don't want to really bring him into the situation, but I can say that he too was someone who struggled a lot with not getting the love and attention that he should have gotten from my dad. And so we were both handed a really short end of the stick. Both of us kind of lost our dad, essentially, if you will, at a young age. And the only other person we could hold on to was our mom. But my mom, as you've heard from previous episodes, especially the one about mommy issues, she was just very distant from me as well. I kind of always felt, and I still believe till this day, that I was an attempt to save a marriage, and it didn't work because shortly after, 5 years later, they divorced. That's after having my brother, who's 4 years older than me. So they tried and they gave it the time. but it was also a very abusive home. It was a very abusive marriage to my remembrance. I just, think that there was a lot of pain associated with being together. And so then when we departed and we were separated, it didn't feel much different from when they were together. However, the long-term effects have been incredible. And so now that I am almost 40, even still, I struggle with abandonment issues and trust issues. And this is something that goes back to like when my husband and I were boyfriend and girlfriend, because I immediately thought, oh, he's not going to come. He's not going to show up. It's just like another instance, just like it was with my dad, but it's like, it's just a result of what I was given growing up. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, pity me or woe is me or whatnot, but this was my reality and this is what I dealt with. And so it made it hard when I tried to have relationships like that of my marriage. But I'm very grateful that my husband was understanding and truly saw both sides of the picture. So, as you can see from my story, unresolved daddy issues can significantly impact adult relationships, both romantically and otherwise. People with daddy issues, they struggle with trust, they have a fear of abandonment, or they continuously seek people who are emotionally unavailable. And that's just because it's like for like, it's how you recognize people. So for me, these issues often showed up in my romantic relationships, like with my now husband, at that time boyfriend. I found myself drawn to partners who were emotionally distant, kind of mirroring the dynamic I had with my father. And it took a lot of self-reflection and therapy to recognize and start addressing these patterns. But even the person that I dated before my husband, who passed away, I noticed that I was also seeking the same qualities, versus just accepting the fact that I didn't have the best father growing up. He's a good person at heart, but maybe not the best father, and kind of learn from that. I struggled with that. And so that's something that is a journey. Healing from daddy issues is a journey. But it's possible, and I think that daddy issues is not something out of this world that people have heard before. There are many children who do not have good relationships with their dad or do not have good relationships with their mom. But I feel that there are ways to manage this. There are ways to mitigate this. It doesn't mean that you have to repeat the cycle. So as you know, and with my podcast and the book that I'm writing, I'm all about breaking the cycle and being the difference. So it stops with me. Right? So like any cycle, any vicious cycle for that matter, stops with me. And so with that, here are some practical tips on self-awareness and personal growth. So number one, and I think it's the most important, is to acknowledge your feelings. Exactly how you feel and exactly how someone makes you feel, let alone that of your parent or let alone that of your love, whatever it is or whoever it is, acknowledging your feelings. Feel your feelings. It's okay. There's so much stigma around like being, sentimental or feeling your feelings. It's often seen as weak. And to my to my perspective, it's anything but. It is extremely strong and extremely powerful for you to acknowledge your feelings, recognize that these are feelings that you're feeling and that they do have meaning, they have value, and let's work through them. Now, with that and acknowledging your feelings, you definitely want to seek therapy. So I'm the first one that will say that therapy has always helped me. I have been in and out of therapy for the majority of my life, and it has helped me. It's not something that I, want to say I had to basically have in order to live my life. But therapy has always been super helpful when it has been an active part of my life. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. Another thing that I want to bring up is building your self-esteem. So your parents are naturally supposed to be the ones that really build your self-esteem, build your confidence, especially when you're young, and make you feel like you can and are amazing, right? Well, as you grow up and with daddy issues, you can often feel like, oh, am I not enough? Am I not good enough? Because if I was good enough, he may spend time with me, or if I was who he wanted, then he would spend time with me. That plays out in daddy issues too. And it's very relative to in a relationship or just feeling insecure overall. And I know for me, that's something that I struggled with. So focus on things to build your self-esteem. Engage in activities that like make you feel good about yourself and build your confidence. That is something that is game changing. And in my own journey, like I mentioned, therapy played a crucial role. And the reason why is because like it played a safe space, it provided a safe space for me to explore my feelings and help me develop healthier relationship patterns. I had to learn a lot of those in my adulthood because growing up, I didn't have any cognitive behavioral practices or things that my parents taught me or how to manage my feelings or what have you. So I also found journaling to be a very valuable tool for self-reflection and understanding my emotions better. Journaling is something that I go to, especially when I'm feeling my weakest. It's something that I go to when I definitely want to write towards my book, but just something that I want to get off my chest, that I want to put on paper, and I want it to have an impact on me forever. So for me, writing it on paper is like solidifying that, so it's very helpful to me. But, daddy issues overall can profoundly affect our lives. But, understanding and addressing them is the first step towards healing. Now, we've explored kind of where it comes from, the impacts, and the ways to move forward. But remember, you're not in this journey alone, okay? And so daddy issues are something that many experience, but daddy issues do not define you. Daddy issues do not say that if you were to marry, that you would carry on those daddy issues into the daddy or father of your own children. On the contrary, it sets a baseline and provides you the ability to see exactly what you don't want and exactly how you don't want to be as a parent to your kids. I love my dad. I will always love my dad. I will ride or die for anyone in my family because that's just the way that I am and that's the way that I've always been. However, I need to call a spade a spade. And for so long, I've kept this inside and I haven't said anything, but I've always battled. I've always struggled with having a paternal figure in my life. I remember when my mom was dating, my sister's father, and she was pregnant. I think it was like around like when she was like 34, 35. My sister and I have 12 years apart. My sister that we share the same mom. I have a lot of siblings, okay? So, but my sister that we share the same mom, different dad, I remember my mom being with her dad and just the emotional and mental roller coaster that played and how it impacted me. I mean, I remember seeing him literally kick my mom in the stomach when she was pregnant. The abuse was just unnerving and something that I have always held on to. And because I'm such a protective person of the people that I love, I definitely, did my piece to get involved at that moment when that happened to my mom. But it's just overall, like just looking at all the experiences, I haven't had great experiences. I haven't had great examples to learn from. And so it's all played a part in me as an adult, as a wife, as a mother of children. I can't say the same about my husband because he's absolutely amazing and the best father that I could ever want for my children. But I think that comes with the experience of learning from situations like the one that I was in, so that you can see exactly what you don't want versus what you do want. Okay. That is important to recognize and distinct. So because this episode is super emotional and not something that I take lightly, because I love my dad and I hope and pray that we can have a better relationship one day, because he is a good guy, because I am a good daughter, and because I think that this life is but one, and I think it's so important to have a relationship with your father. And I will never stop telling him that I love him and reaching out to him or what have you, but it takes two to tango, and it's the same thing with my mom. It takes two to tango. I can sit here and say I love you all day and send all the messages in the world, but if I'm not getting the same reciprocation, there's only so much that I can do. And feeling like an outcast for so many years and constantly being like the redheaded stepchild, it kind of wears on you, and like this year I'm about to be 40, and all I want is, like, if anything, if not for me, for my children to have a relationship with their grandparents. And so it's a work in progress, and I really don't know what's to come in the near future. However, I do feel that I have done the right thing, and I have set the positive example that I think is most important for my children. So yeah, this is a kind of short episode today. It's probably shorter than the majority of my episodes, but it's pretty deep and it's pretty critical, and I really don't want to talk about it anymore. It's something really emotional for me and something that I've dealt with as a child, since I was a child. So to recap, daddy issues can profoundly affect our lives. But addressing them is the first step towards healing. Now, for more resources or for inspiration and motivation, you can check out my Instagram at Tiffany Elise Inc. And also the Empathic Chronicles Instagram. Definitely check that out for just show notes and references, and also reach out to me. Send me a message if you want help, if you want someone to talk to. Now, next week we'll be discussing a completely different topic, but nonetheless, they are all topics that shape our lives. And please be sure to add this episode to your library and leave your feedback, please. You are the one who is hearing this. I am the one that is pouring my heart out to you. I definitely want to hear what you think. So thank you for joining me today on another episode of Empathic Chronicles. I'm your host, Tiffany Elise, and this episode on exploring the roots and impact of daddy issues will hopefully help someone who knows what I'm talking about. So yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.